I am rate number one. One!
I remember back in the day, around 1988, watching Marlon Starling defend his WBA title against Thomas Molinares of Colombia. And he was controlling the fight. It wasn't the greatest fight from what I remember. And in the fifth round, the round ended. And I remember Marlon Starling looking to throw a late punch. And Thomas Molinares, he threw a late punch and knocked Starling out with a right hand. Larry Hazard supported the referee, saying the punch may have landed a fraction of a second after the bell. And Molinares was still champion. But when Ross Greenberg of Home Box Office replayed the sequence, the tape seemed to show that Molinares' punch started after the bell sounded. Starling actually woke up, and when he was confronted about being knocked out, he didn't remember a bar of it. He says, "What you talk?" He didn't remember. Temporary memory loss, yeah. He's like, "What are you talking about?" A day later, Larry Hazard, the New Jersey State Athletic Control Board Commissioner, I believe he ruled the fight as a no contest. He said it was up to the WBA, who sanctioned the bout, to decide whether to reinstate Starling as champion. Now, it's weird. BoxRec are saying that the WBA allowed Molinares to keep the crown, despite New Jersey deeming it a no contest. But I don't remember Molinares defending that title. I don't remember that. Mark Breland knocked out the Korean for the vacant title a couple of months later. I think Molinares may have vacated. What else came out of that fight is the 10-second warning, where they bang the canvas 10 seconds before the round is over to inform the referee to get between the fighters and make sure no extracurricular shenanigans goes on. That came out of that fight there. But what I'm trying to say is, though, they had the video evidence. HBO reviewed what happened, but they didn't act on the evidence and determine a verdict right there on the spot. They did that on Saturday with Charlie Edwards and Martinez. Video assisted refereeing, VAR. Now, what I want to know, was VAR contracted into that bout that it would be used in case of situations like what happened? Or was this just an opportune moment for Sullivan to throw his weight round and conclude the bout in favour of the fighter that he wanted to win? Which the WBC does way too much. It takes opportunities that are not necessarily in the rulings to favour the fighter that they're in favour with. And as long as you're going to use VAR all the time, or inform me, was VAR part of how that contest was going to be adjudicated? And if this was back in the day in locations where there was no slow motion replay or VAR, or whatever you want to call it, Charlie would have lost his belt. And when Eddie was asked about a potential rematch, Eddie started talking about Charlie was tight at the weight. That rematch ain't going to happen, people. At least not straight away. No way. If that ends up with Charlie vacating his belt, so be it. So be it. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe it will. I didn't hear Eddie say it, but he didn't seem too enthusiastic about it. Then after all the shit that Sullivan's put Dillian through and Eddie threatening to take legal action out on Sullivan, he's buddying up with Sullivan. Oh, you got to understand how fair Sullivan was. He voted against a Mexican and he's a Mexican. Yeah, he's a Mexican, but he's not Canelo, is he? He's not Chavez Jr. He's not exactly we can cake off his sanctioning fees, Martinez, is he? Just had a quick look at the draw for the Ultimate Boxer. That's MTK's tournament. Eddie said he was thinking about bidding for it, but I don't know if he did. But it's ended up on BT rather than Sky. Is it a situation where Frank will be maybe overseeing what's happening, like Eddie apparently oversees anything boxing related on Sky? I don't know if that's still the case, since he said his loyalties were with DAZN. And that's certainly the case with Aram at ESPN, that you can't just pitch up your cards on the ESPN broadcast without Aram having some involvement. But it's the light middleweights. We got Kingsley Mbenike against Lenny Fuller, Joshua Ejakaboli, if I'm pronouncing the names right, versus Khan Horse, Louis Surrett versus Sean Robinson, Alan Collins versus Stephen Donnelly. 20th of September, O2 Arena, I believe it's the O2 Arena. I would have liked to have seen Arsenio Byfield in there, but he didn't get an invite. He wasn't put in the hat. Spencer Fearon and Steve Bunce were drawing names out of a box. He said on Twitter, Arsenio, that perhaps he's just ruffled too many feathers in the game, so he feels he's getting frozen out. I think he would have been a good name. Obviously, the likes of Fitzgerald, Cheeseman, and Fowler, they're not going to enter. You know, they're earning perfectly good purses on Sky. They're looking towards, you know, European, and I'm not going to say world yet. I don't think none of them are nowhere near there. I'm glad the tournament is picking up more traction. I haven't watched much of it, I'm going to admit that. But it's going to need more recognisable names if it's going to go that much further. O'Hara Davis is a decent name at 140, and a lot of people will come there to see him lose, and I think he knows that. But we'll see how it progresses. Luke Campbell, after a tough evening with Vasyl Lomachenko, where Luke acquitted himself extremely well. He was taken to hospital for some routine tests, and now they're just planning their assault on the boxing game now. Eddie and Luke, and Team Luke. I think the plan is if Lomachenko can topple the 4 belts against Come, he may move back down to super feather. It's weird, isn't it? As Tank is moving up to lightweight. And then Luke will be planning to win a world title finally at 135. Although he's got his work cut out. He's got his work cut out against the likes of Haney, Tank, Lopez, Come, whoever he fights. He still has his work cut out. Lomachenko is not the only 135 pounder that can fight. But he got a standing ovation as he left the O2. He's on his route to becoming a British boxing star in this country. I won't go as far to say he'll be a pay-per-view star. If he gets the right fighter, dance partner, Lomachenko, then yeah. Luke is 32 this month, so time is against him. The likes of Tank and Haney, they don't have the mileage on their clocks. They're fast and powerful. Ironically, his best shot at winning a world title right now might be against Lomachenko at 135, because he said he learnt some stuff from Lomachenko that he's going to take and use himself in fights. And he already has the experience of fighting Lomachenko, so he has to make a few adjustments. Not saying he'll beat him, but Lopez, talented fighter, inexperienced. Come, hard hitter, can box a little, big, imposing, very hard puncher. Technique a little flawed though. Haney looks like he's developing some pop in his punches. I don't know how good Abdullev is, who's fighting Haney in the Eliminator. We'll see how Haney handles that. We all know Tank hits very hard, and I don't think his punches will be any weaker at 135. I'm assuming that 130 was a bit of a struggle for Tank. Once again, PBC or not, Matchroom, ESPN, I ain't in no war with no fighters. Once they're taking the right fights, I'm all up for it. I believe Tank can go down in history as one of the biggest 135-pound punchers, but he's got to take the fights. And he can't let this side of the street affect his progress. I mean, what can you do at 135 without cross-promotion? The likes of a Luke Campbell, which is a good fight for Tank in the UK. He's already fought out in Britain. This time it will be pay-per-view against Campbell. He's the type who could do pay-per-view against Luke Campbell out here. You know, that's with Matchroom. That could be with DAZN. Lopez and Come, you're talking about top-rank ESPN. Haney, that's Matchroom, that's DAZN. Lomachenko, that's ESPN. So you have to look at communicating with other promoters to get you to where you need to be. And boxing's always been like that. There's nothing new here. Loma going back down to 130. Why? What's out there? Okay, he could become undisputed with whoever's got belts out there. But it's almost like been there, done that. Read the book, got the t-shirt. And while I'm willing to say he's not no ordinary fighter, at 31, moving back down? We know the history of fighters actually moving down weights when they're aging. Roy Jones, Chris Bird. Who did it recently? Curtis Stevens did it. And it just doesn't really seem that great an idea. But maybe he can be an exception. Eddie Chambers, when he came down to cruiserweight and took on Machuno, he looked like an absolute ghost of himself in that ring. There was no energy there at all. Oscar versus Pacquiao. That was crazy. Want to big up Hatman. Done some really good videos today. He was speaking about Callum Smith, and you know what, man? I'm just going to take what you said. I'm not going to listen to the whole of the Joe Gallagher interview. Too much work. But from what Hatman was saying, that it's a money thing why him and Callum Smith are exploring other options outside Matchroom for financial opportunities. And the one thing that stuck in my head was him saying that London fighters are favoured at Sky and Matchroom. Huh? Tony Bellew, who is from the same city as Callum Smith, is Eddie Hearn's favourite fighter, clearly. Carl Froch comes from Nottingham. Even AJ's from Watford. No, I mean, Londoners are claiming AJ. I mean, AJ is a Londoner. North London, all day. What about Dave Allen? He lost his last fight. He was doing punditry work the other day. He's on the Lewis Ritson card and has done very well financially out of boxing. And let's face it, you know, Dave is British level. I mean, even David Price, he's on the same type of contract that Callum Smith is, fight-by-fight basis. How much time does Eddie recycle David Price and got him paydays? And he's from Liverpool, just like Callum. Problem is that Callum Smith, and I've already said this a whole load of times, anyone knows, he's one of my favourite British fighters. I've said that many a time. But Callum doesn't have no personality at all. He has no personality. I don't know if it was him who said it or anyone else who said it. He shuns the limelight to stay around his kids and his family. We don't know anything about him. And whose fault is that? Kell Brook is one of the more popular Matchroom fighters. He's from Sheffield, up north. He's been in big fights with Golovkin, Spence, Porter. I don't know if Amir Khan's going to be fighting on there. And okay, he did get Amir an advanced stage when Amir had already made his name in America. But the truth is, going through the list, most of the popular Matchroom fighters are probably not Londoners. The Ritson card in Newcastle is practically sold out. That's 9,000 people for the British title. Callum has not done enough to sell himself. You can't blame that on Eddie. You can't blame that on Matchroom. Matchroom is definitely the promotional outfit that if you're prepared to put a little work in to sell yourself, you can make something of yourself. I mean, look at Derek Chisora, the Parker fight. Derek set it off already. I'm going to knock that dingo out and send him back down under and this and that. Talking about Joseph Parker. Derek's already got the support base divided. They're probably even saying F him if they come from New Zealand. Or they're bigging Derek up if they're from London or a Chisora fan. The fight's already lit. Don't get me wrong. I critique Hughie Fury, but he seems like a very nice young man. And Callum Smith is a very nice young man. Now the difference between the two is obvious. Callum can fight and Hughie has no idea how to implement offense at all. But between them, they couldn't develop half a personality between the two of them. It's always been relatively split. Not all the big name boxers have come from London in the United Kingdom. Alright, you've got Frank Bruno, Henry Cooper, Billy Walker, big ticket sellers and whatnot, big TV numbers and ratings. But what about guys like Len Harvey? He never fought for a world title. 90,000 at the White City. 90,000. He was from Cornwall. His opponent, who has one of the highest KO percentages in British boxing, Jock McAvoy, well, he was from Rochdale, the Rochdale Thunderbolt. What about Benny Lynch from Scotland? Flyweight, immensely popular. Freddie Mills was from Bournemouth. It's not London. Randolph Turpin, Leamington Spa. It's not London. Ricky Hatton, Manchester. Tyson Fury, Manchester. Barry McGuigan. Now, most of the big recorded matches that are historically documented, yes, they did happen in London. Of course they did. But, you know, there's been many big events in the MEN Manchester Arena outside of London where it's been popping off. Nassim Hamed. Even today. Josh Warrington. Let's not play into this bias thing, you know. I know Warrington and Hamed, they weren't with the Hearns or anything like that. But let's not go there, Joe Gallagher. Now, I'm not going to do the research, but I wonder who's got more Twitter followers, Anthony Yard or Callum Smith. I'm not discussing who's the better boxer. That's not the discussion. It's who can put themselves out there to potentially put bums on seats. That's what we're talking here. Callum's weight class already puts him behind the pace. The super middleweights haven't been popular for a long time, since Joe Calzaghe, when Ward was in that tournament, Carl Froch, etc., Anthony Durrell, Callum Smith, Caleb Plant, Benavidez. Just not that interesting personalities. And I am looking forward to Benavidez and Durrell, though, you know. But it's not a massive fight, even amongst hardcores. Now, Billy Joe Saunders, not a big ticket seller, but, you know, he can cause a little controversy and stir it up a little. James DeGale, never really been that popular in this country from his pro debut when he was getting booed in certain arenas. Chris Eubank, now, you know, he's done very well for himself considering he hasn't won an official sanctioning belt. I'm not recognizing the IBO, really. If you had another recognized belt like a WBO, WBC, WBA, IBF alongside that, then fair enough, but I can't recognize that by itself. Obviously, he's piggybacking off his dad. Can't deny that. But even if he wasn't, it'd still be a little more interesting than Callum. I mean, Callum got the majority of that $6 million purse split with Groves in Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, okay, they didn't get that with Eddie. They got that on the World Boxing Super Series. But, you know, come on, man. Who else has he fought? Maybe you should go over there to the PBC then. See if the grass is greener on the other side. That's what you should do then. Or let's see how much Aaron will pay you for making your first super middleweight title defense against Njikam and Dam. Callum will struggle with any promoter because he doesn't have no personality. Who knows anything about Callum Smith more than any British boxer? I know more about Prince Patel than Callum Smith. Now, Anthony Fowler, I'm not going to say typical, but Anthony Fowler is a Liverpool kid. He's a bit cocky, right? Like some of them, but he's quite funny too. Like, I know more about Anthony Fowler than Callum Smith. And I've been watching Callum Smith fight longer. I'm more engaged with Anthony Fowler's personality than Callum Smith's. Anthony Fowler hasn't even broke British level yet. That's how bad Callum Smith has done promoting himself. And before anyone says I'm a Callum Smith hater, anyone who's followed with any regularity will know. I've already said Callum Smith is one of my favourite British boxers. I picked him to win the World Boxing Super Series, either him or Chris Eubank. I picked him to beat George Groves, right? No one can say I've ever said anything bad about Callum Smith as a boxer. You can't go there. You go to the PBC, they don't have no promoter, bruh. They don't have no promoter. Eddie is visible, yeah? If it weren't for people like Eddie, someone like Katie Taylor, she don't like the camera either. So when David Hay was saying, I wanted to hear Katie Taylor's interview and Eddie's like blah, 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 apples and pears, Katie just wants to box. Katie had some endorsement opportunity, I believe, to make some money. Katie was like, no, I'm going to the gym. I've got to go to the gym. That's the type of girl Katie is. And Callum would probably do something like that too. Some people ain't built for the camera. Eddie is visible. So for guys like Callum and Katie Taylor who don't like the camera, Eddie's doing his job. Eddie's doing his job. And like Hatman said today, maybe Eddie is spreading himself a little thin, being in America, being in England 1 minute, in Saudi Arabia, then he's in Italy, then he's in flipping, he's everywhere, right? Maybe he's spreading himself very thin. But the PBC don't have no promoter. Now, Bob Arum's old, maybe he can do a little running around for you. But this is something you better think through. You better think it through. The likes of Deontay Wilder's probably had to do way more self-promoting on the PBC than you'd like to see a boxer have to do. You know, the likes of Adrian Broner, they can sell themselves, although it's I don't think you want to go down the Adrian Broner route, in all truth. You know, it's all promotion is good promotion with Adrian Broner, you know. Now, where I can see Eddie going wrong with Callum Smith is promoting guys like Dave Allen over Callum Smith. That's a crime in itself. It's a crime. But there's a certain fan demographic who like Dave Allen stuffing socks in his boxer shorts and doing crazy stuff. People relate to him because he's got a gambling addiction and he's a bit vulnerable here and there and stuff like that. A lot of the average British males relate, or at least have some kind of bonding with what Dave is like. But Gallagher would do well to remember, with the likes of a Dave Allen or a David Price, that Brits like certain boxers even if they're not going to be prolific world champions. It's always been like that. It's a different market from probably anywhere in the world you can go in terms of that dynamic. I mean, he's trained the likes of Scott Quigg, a featherweight. Now, Scott's not a crazy kid in terms of personality, but he's quite a bright young dude, you know what I mean? Like, there was some banter between him and Frampton. Even Anthony Crolla, he doesn't have no crazy personality, but he could string a couple of sentences together. I can't remember anything Callum Smith has ever said, now I'm thinking about it. Outside of the technical stuff that went on in the ring in his fight, I can't remember anything. Anything. Like George Groves. If George Groves has got an interview on YouTube, I always put it on. You know, I've known him from a kid. I like listening to him speak. Eubank Jr., if he's got an interview, I'm going to put it on and listen. Tony Bellew, I'll probably listen to his videos. Because you build a rapport, especially if it's a domestic fighter, and I've been following the domestic scene. It's my domestic scene. By now, Callum should have built a rapport. He doesn't have to do anything crazy. Not at all. Not at all. But Anthony Crolla, he spoke to us about trying to foil the next door neighbor's burglary and then got that horrific attack as a consequence. He spoke to the people about that. And, you know, people relate with your experience. You must have one story you can share with us outside of boxing, Callum. One. Phone up Coogan and set up an interview. Oh yeah, I just want to talk. Fishing, darts, some funny stories about you and your brothers, anything. You see Tony Bellew break down on the camera about his wife's brother when he died. Just let it go. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying you have to do that, but the fact that he can do that makes him human to the people watching. And let's not get it twisted. If you do something like that as a grown man crying on camera, you'll get other people saying, "Oh, what a wally, you're crying on camera." But you don't care. And then even somebody like Tunde Ajayi, he divides opinion right now. But if he can be successful, he's going to get people who maybe turn up, buy the ticket to see his fighters get beat because they just don't like him. But he's going to inspire a lot of people as well. There's going to be, and there is already, there's a growing amount of people, believe it or not, who find that positive reinforcement-ish that Tunde talks very catchy. Maybe it might get some people off their arse to go to the gym and get fit or start that business that they've always been talking about starting, getting off their arse and actually doing something about it. Positive reinforcement. And that can get annoying. If you're in a negative mood and you're around somebody just trying to be positive every second, you're in a negative space. That can get annoying. But then they leave you with what choice? You're either going to stay there pissed off or negative, or you're going to try and get out of that rut. Truth is, Callum Smith looks disinterested, unapproachable almost, in terms of anything to do with boxing, in terms of promotion, branding, outside the ring. He seems very disinterested. And the fact that neither he or Joe Gallagher is not acknowledging that is a little disingenuous. Not a little disingenuous, quite a lot disingenuous.